When you make decisions about what to eat, what factors in? Most people think about taste, what food costs, what is available, and in some cases, the health consequences. But what about the environmental impact of food choices? Our guest, Dr. Diego Rose, has done fascinating work on just this topic. I'm Kelly Brownell, Director of the World Food Policy Center at Duke University and Professor of Public Policy at Duke. Diego Rose is Director of Nutrition at Tulane University's School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. He has training in nutritional sciences, public health, and agricultural economics, and his work explores the social and economic side of nutrition problems with a focus on food security, food environment, and the environmental impacts of dietary choices. Diego, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kelly.
So you recently led the development of a position paper by the Society for Nutrition Education and Behavior that was on the importance of including environmental sustainability in dietary guidance. What motivated you to do this, and what was the main point of the paper, and how did the process unfold for coming to the consensus?
Our environmental problems are so severe. I mean, global warming is, everybody's heard about that. It's, 17 of the 18 hottest years on record have occurred this century. And there's just report after report after report coming out from not just one or two scientists, but hundreds of scientists that have looked at the issue and have come out with, the latest science on climate change. And so it's scary. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done about it. And I think we can do it in all sectors of the economy. I think the particular motivation for looking at environmental sustainability in dietary guidance is that our own Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee in 2015 included a chapter on sustainability in their expert report that's done in preparation for publishing the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And it basically argued that Americans, by eating more plant-based foods and less animal-based foods, they could eat a healthier diet and it would be environmentally more sustainable. That concept, the whole idea of sustainability never made its way into the dietary guidelines for Americans.
What happened there? Why was that?
Well, we have this process in the country in terms of our dietary guidelines in which it's a two-stage. It wasn't always this way, but it is now. There's the expert scientific report, and then there's the political document that comes out of the Department of Health and Human Services and U.S. Department of Agriculture. So as soon as you have a report coming out of the government and there's people that can influence it, including legislators and lobbyists that influence legislators, then it's subject to influence groups. And so that there was a big reaction when people found out that they were going to include a chapter on sustainability in the expert report. There was even pushback from the Congress before that report came out.
I agree that it was historic that Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee put sustainability in the context of what people are eating in terms of nutrition. Too bad that it got scotched by the people involved in politics, but hopefully it's a sign of good things to come. So let's go back to the position paper that you did and talk about your research and the research of others on the carbon footprint of U.S. diets. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, if I may, just to back up. So, I mean, the motivation then, at the same time that this was getting scotched, as you put it, the Society for Nutrition Education and Behavior had a call for position papers. They had not done their own position paper in the past, and they wanted to do one. And so they asked for different topics. We suggested this one. Why not include environmental sustainability within dietary guidance? And the board of directors and the editors of the journal decided that was a good topic. They put out a call. We responded to that. We were chosen to write that. And so that's what got us all started on it. We detailed in that article what's the current science right now on the conditions for the environment? What's the role that agriculture plays in that? And therefore, why our food choices make a difference? And then we looked at the specific science that looks at the impacts of foods. It's called life cycle assessment. We explained that in the position paper. Then we came out with some recommendations about including sustainability in dietary guidance, both at the federal level, but also just in classes or in one-on-one when nutritionists speak, why not mention about environmental sustainability? We also talked about recommendations for research, and we also talk about recommendations for nutrition education practice. So that's what the gist of the paper is about.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. What are some examples of how food and environmental practices are related to environmental problems?
So agriculture is responsible for about a quarter of greenhouse gases in the world. The choices we make as individuals then influence what gets produced. Right away, then, our food choices can influence global warming. Just livestock alone accounts for 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So that's a direct connection between our dietary choices and environmental impacts. I mean, agriculture also contributes to extensive clearing of forests. It has widespread water pollution from nutrient runoff, fertilizer runoff, and overuse of fresh water. So there's all kinds of problems that agriculture causes.
We recorded a farmer in North Dakota named Gabe Brown who uses regenerative agriculture. And his point is that if you're going to raise animals for meat, there are better and worse ways to do it. And the regenerative agriculture approach seems to be one way of minimizing impact on the environment. Do you think that offers much promise to do things like that?
I think there's a lot of benefits to regenerative agriculture. I think particularly if you're not going to be overusing fertilizer and pesticides, there's a lot of benefits to that.
So let me ask a related question. Do you see a connection between a food's impact on the environment and its nutritional value?
Kelly, it's really complex. There's over 40 different nutrients. There's at least a dozen different environmental impacts that production of a food could entail. I mean, it just really depends. The generalities that we could make are that animal-based foods have greater impacts than plant-based foods. We eat too much animal protein in this country and not enough fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes. We could stand to eat more plant-based foods and fewer animal-based foods. That said, there are nuances, and so beef, which is has a very large carbon footprint, also has many nutrients involved in it. It has on the positive side, has iron and zinc and all kinds of trace minerals, but then it has saturated fat. So it's really a complex dynamic. You have to look at that as a case by case.
Thanks for clarifying that. So, do you see this idea of low carbon diets catching on, or more people embracing this idea as they make their own choices?
I see it as catching on. We've seen in our own research that young people are more inclined to eat low carbon diets. I see it with my students. There's a lot of enthusiasm for whenever I talk about this topic. We see it in our dining halls on campus. There's a lot more requests now for vegetarian and vegan offerings. You see it in the popular media. Beyonce and Jay-Z are asking their followers to eat a vegan diet. So, yeah, I mean, I think there is movement towards that. I don't think people that are concerned about lowering the carbon footprint of their diets need to become vegans. Let me get that out there. You can make a difference just by cutting back a little bit on your beef consumption or your dairy consumption.
Well, so that helps address that last question that I was going to have about somebody wanting to make change. What would they do? So it sounds like it really starts with meat. Is that correct?
I think if you could reduce ruminant animal consumption, that would be the best thing. So we suggest, if you could cut back on beef, if instead of making beef lasagna, make it, ground turkey lasagna, or, instead of a steak, how about a chicken steak? Like I said previously, chicken has 1/8 the greenhouse gas emissions as beef, and it has less water use and all sorts of things. And so that would definitely improve. If you went to a plant-based diet, even more so, but not necessarily, not required. Other things that could help, one of the big issues we face is waste. About 30% of our footprint, of our food footprint, comes from wasted food, food loss. And most of that comes at the retail and consumer end. So if we could plan our diets a little bit better, plan our shopping trips, that would certainly help out.
You've pointed out something really important, that there's a lot to think about when people make their food choices, and now environment is part of the picture. And I appreciate you describing that in such careful detail. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly.
Our guest has been Professor Diego Rose, the Director of Nutrition at Tulane University's School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. And thank you for being a listener. If you would like to subscribe to the Leading Voices in Food series, you may do so at Google Play, Stitcher, Radio Public, or Apple Podcasts, or you can visit the website of the Duke World Food Policy Center. Thank you. This is Kelly Brownell.